on video?
It is, sir.
Anytime you're leaving guys that you've shed blood, sweat, and tears with, it's saying goodbye to them is quite an emotional thing. There's no bond any stronger when you have a bond like that with guys that they're not just guys, they're my brothers.
So that dust that we're seeing, that's the dust that you lived in constantly?
Yeah. My name is Cpl Saumure. I was a reservist infantryman in the Canadian Armed Forces, to the 1st Battalion of the Royal Canadian Regiment out of Petawawa, Ontario. Specifically, I was assigned to 3 section, Charlie Team Fire Team Leader, 3 section, 9 platoon, Charles Company. Task Force 306 was the task force to deployment to Afghanistan, and that was from August of 2006, and we eventually arrived back home in March of 2007. We were located in Kandahar in the south of Afghanistan. So Charles Company was part of the battle group, and it was a frontline infantry company. It was a mechanized company. So we were tasked with combat operations, the front line of the fighting force of the battle group. The terrain varied. It was the areas we were in a lot were irrigation ditches, lots of compounds. Just to describe the position a little bit, so it was named Strong Point Center. It was a defensive position to defend the road as it was under construction. This particular strong point came out of the ground almost cliff-like on the edges, almost in a circle, and so it rose out of the ground, came up higher. Through the middle of that circle, a road that's a little bit lower down level with the rest of the ground. And we had gone out on a clearance patrol, so part of our job there as part of the defensive, leading up to our positions were many of these grape fields that again have the 1 meter high walls. There was irrigation ditches that run through, and it's very easily defensible terrain. But it's also easy to gain access to get towards us to attack. It came right up to the position, so we would lay out. We had gone out with a clearance patrol, the whole platoon mounted up with the Afghan army. Following our patrol, we were all mounting back up in our light armored vehicles and starting to roll back towards Strong Point Center when our 1 section, or call sign 33 Alpha, had reversed over an IED and had an IED strike. So that vehicle became disabled. They all went back to Patrol Base Wilson. That left us with 3 LAVs. So we returned to Strong Point Center and then continued our defensive position. The battle group commander, they had just left our position, so they had just started going northbound on route summits, had just left, and what I recall happening then was that time one of the corporals, Corporal Mike Lisk, was on turret watch, so he was the lone man in the turret. He had access to a headset which obviously connected to the radio. He had stuck his head out saying that an attack on a Canadian position is imminent, and no sooner did those words come out of his mouth that our platoon's position was hit by multiple rocket-propelled grenades. So there were just explosions everywhere, and then just a significant amount of small arms fire. So just a lot of snaps, cracks, just bullets whizzing by. The ramp was down. The fire came from the west. It came from the southwest and the south as well, and so most of us were located to the front of our LAV. We were all in shock, and then we got to get our stuff on, and it's all at the back of the LAV, and that's where all the fire is coming from. Individually, at a couple at a time, we'd all crawl over, don our equipment. Um, there was a small berm that was directly behind our lab, very, very, very small, like, maybe the size of a speed bump. um, so some of the section had started re-engaging the targets to the west with their small arms. Once I crawled up and got all my equipment on, the whole section was pretty much from one side to the other against this berm. There's nowhere for me to go, and so myself and I believe initially was one of our C9 gunners, Garrett Atchney-Penascom. We were tasked to go to the sandbag wall and cover everything to the north and the east, and make sure that we weren't surrounded and no getting taking fire from that. It had to have been probably about 15 to 25 people. Like, if I had to give you a range, there had to have been 15 to 25. The reason I say that is no less than the other two vehicles on the position were hit by multiple rocket propelled grenades, and a rocket propelled grenade is not something you just automatically quickly load, and it takes a little bit. So both platoon headquarters their lab was hit by multiple rocket propelled grenades, and then two sections light armored vehicle was hit by multiple rocket propelled grenades, and then the amount of automatic small arms fire that we were taking was it was a large force. It wasn't just a couple of guys. It was a coordinated, sustained attack. So myself and my fire team partner, Ted Runyon Lloyd, were tasked with running additional ammunition from our lab's position to section. We also knew we had casualties. Our platoon commander had already been in that direction, I believe, and so we were given small packs with ammunition as well as numerous ammo cans, and so we had to run from there to our lab, from our lab to that. Still, this whole time, gunfire's coming in. We get into the cut. We go into the casualty collection point. So at that time, it was myself, Runyon, the company quartermaster CQ, Keith Folstead, and our platoon medic. And then we all collected and stopped, took a breath at the casualty collection point, the bowl. We left the medic there because we couldn't risk her getting killed or wounded because the firefight was still ongoing at this time. And then at that point, that's when the CQ called for the person at the OP to give us some covering fire. So he let off a burst of the machine gun, and then we ran from our position approximately 50 meters from that bowl down towards two section, their lav, and then dropped off the ammunition. And that's when I saw that Sergeant Darcy Tedford was dead, as well as Private Blake Williamson, and the rest of the section was against the sandbag wall that they had there. Was returning fire. The lav was firing. I was feeding them boxes of 7.62 so that they could keep the machine gun firing. And I would alternate between that and then going and collecting ammunition, running it out to the guys at the sandbags. As you burn through your magazines at 30 rounds a magazine and you dump them, well, those magazines don't fill themselves back up, and so I took it upon myself and started reloading magazines, giving everybody water. The Canadian artillery unit was using M777 howitzers at that time. And this attack came literally from across the street. So at that point, Route Summit was maybe 100 meters across, 100 meters wide. They were just on the other side of the road. So we started getting the call for danger close artillery fire. So it was literally just across the street. Artillery shells started landing, and that kicks the wind out of you. And then I put rocket launchers to the side of every guy, and then eventually I also ran ammunition and water from that lab to the OP, the observation point. The battle could have been 20 to 30 minutes itself altogether, maybe upwards of an hour. This was not a hit and run tactic. This was it was a deliberate assault or an attempt of a deliberate assault on our position. So maybe they felt that they could overwhelm us. But with the 25 millimeter fire from just our platoon, as well as the battle group headquarters, and then the artillery fire raining down, received attack helicopters as well, and then fighter jets as well. So
Yeah.
it just an overwhelming amount of fire came down. Unfortunately, like I mentioned, there was two KIA are killed in action. In the section commander of 2 Section, Darcy Tedford, and one of the privates, Private Blake Williamson. They were both killed. The section second in command, Master Jeremy LeBlanc, had taken shrapnel. He was also the Cpl Tactical Combat Casualty Care member of that section. He bandaged up the gunner of that LAV, Chris Dowhan, who also sustained injuries, as did Chris Meese, and then so a lot of his shrapnel wounds. And the only other member of that section was Jesse LaRochelle, who was the one in the OP at that time. He also sustained injuries. And then our platoon was placed in what's called Stand 2, or 100% Stand 2, which means that every man mans the post, you man the walls, you're all up and you're all on duty watching. And so we received more intelligence that there was supposed to be follow-on attacks on us throughout the night. So we did that all night. The following morning, we were relieved by platoons from Bravo Company attended, and then Bravo Company sent a platoon. We mounted up, and then started our trek back to Kandahar Airfield. In Kandahar proper, I don't remember how long we were there, but it was only a day or two before we were doing the ramp ceremony for Blake and Darcy. The one thing that the military, or at least we were told as reservists, having augmented a regular force battalion, and the one thing they said in Cyprus that always did stick with me is they said that it was important that we all trained together, then we all deployed together, we all knew what we were like before, we all knew what we were like during, and then it was important for us to stick together so that we could identify any sort of cracks or any sort of issues that might arise. That fell through, and upon landing in Trenton, that was the last time I got to see the guys. So very emotional goodbye. I mean, anytime you're leaving guys that you've shed blood, sweat, and tears with, it's saying goodbye to them is quite an emotional thing. I think the military could have done a better job handling that, despite telling us it's important we all stick together. But my understanding is that the regular force side of it, they all got posted out shortly after anyway, or put on courses. But it took a few months for me to post-tour to get myself just wrapped around the things that I'd seen and experienced and done. And I feel it's I've had a few of my brothers that have tried to commit suicide, and I've never had that inclination. That being said, I can understand, but I feel for me that's the one thing that's really worked well, is to be able to talk about my experience, to pass on what I've done, not to sugarcoat it, because talking about it really does, in my opinion, help. I can understand it's not for everyone. I know that first year when I came back, and as you know, I was there for Remembrance Day of 2006. I think at that time, I was still suffering from the aftershock, if you will, of the death of two of my brothers. And we all see the Remembrance Day, we all see the World War II vet crying. And nobody's ever been in that position before. We can understand it, but we've not been there, we don't know it. And for me, that first Remembrance Day, it was hard. And because now I'm that veteran that knows somebody that's died, that's passed. But it's important that I live on to pass on their stories, and the stories of guys like Jesse LaRochelle and all of us that have served. Anybody who comes across a vet, thank them. It means a lot. It does. But I'm proud to have served. I'm glad to have served, and there's not a minute that I don't think or I don't regret. You know, and my tour was both my. It was the best experience of my life, and it was the worst experience of my life all at the same time.